to donate some time, or yield some time, I'm sorry, to the gentleman from Georgia, try and put this in perspective, and then we'll be joined by two other members of the Western Caucus.
I thank you, Mr. Bishop, for yielding some time. And Mr. Bishop, I was really touched by the faces that you brought forward to the American people tonight here on C-SPAN about these people who've lost their jobs, and my good friend Tom McClintock talking about the national forest and the mismanagement that's going on because of the endless environmental wacko lawsuits that are going on there, and the unfortunate, untimely death of this young man who was fighting those fires that very probably could have been prevented if we had managed the forest in a better way, in a correct way, according to just normal silviculture practices. Silviculture means forestry practices to the best extent for the economic purposes, and I thank both of you for bringing the face of people to this discussion tonight. Mr. Speaker, I'm a medical doctor, and I've seen the face of a lot of patients who have struggled with the cost of health care expenses, the cost of health insurance and medication and hospital bills. In over 3.5 decades of practicing general medicine in rural South Georgia and now Northeast Georgia, I've literally given away in my services of over several $100,000 of my services if I had charged for them. We have a proposal that I call Obamacare that's being debated here in the halls of Congress. Mr. Speaker, the Director of the Congressional Budget Office last week said that if Obamacare is passed, it's going to cost 750,000 people their jobs across America. 750,000 people are going to be put out of work just because of passing a bill that supposedly is going to make everybody covered by health insurance. But the Congressional Budget Office Director also said that even in the next 10 years, not everybody would be covered. Let me say that again, because what we keep hearing from the Democratic side is we're going to cover everybody. Everybody's going to have health care. Well, everybody does have access to health care today. Federal law requires it. What everybody does not have is health insurance. But our Democratic colleagues want to give free health insurance to illegal aliens. But that's what Obamacare does. It gives free health insurance to illegal aliens. The 12 million, 15 million illegal aliens here in this country who are criminals. They've entered this country illegally. Virtually all of them have illegal documents. They've broken many federal laws. They're criminals. And my Democratic colleagues want to give them free insurance. It's going to cost 750,000 American citizens jobs to do so. Mr. Speaker, this House considered a bill just a few weeks ago that the Democratic colleagues called cap and trade. I call it tax and trade or tax and cap because it's about taxes. It's about revenue. We hear over and over again that it don't get all these green jobs. Well, it will create some green jobs. In fact, I saw a friend, my next door neighbor in my hall over in Cannon House office building, bring in a chart where he's going to talk about green jobs. And it indeed will create green jobs. But what you're not being told is what happened in Spain. Our president has lifted up Spain as being the model of what we need to do on these green jobs and environmental policy. Well, about a decade ago, Spain put into place a similar piece of legislation as our tax and trade bill that's languishing over in the Senate, and I hope the Senate will defeat it. But in Spain, for every single green job that was created, 2.2 other jobs were cost. In other words, 2.2 people were put out of work for every one person put to work by these green jobs that tax and trade is going to create. I know my Democratic colleagues can add and subtract. I don't want to accuse them of not doing so. But if you subtract 2.2 from 1, you get a minus 1.2. And that's exactly what's going to happen. If the American people don't stand up and say no to tax and trade, or tax and cap, whatever you want to call it, and tell their U.S. senators, Mr. Speaker, that this is going to be disastrous and it's going to cost American jobs, and to defeat it over there in the Senate, there'll be 2.2 people put out of work for every one person that is put to work. I already said the Congressional Budget Office say 750,000 people are going to lose their jobs because of Obamacare. But it's going to do many other things, too, that are disastrous. Obamacare is going to insert a Washington bureaucrat between every patient and their doctor. And that Washington bureaucrat is going to be making, Mr. Speaker, every single individual in this country's health care decision. The patient's family won't be able to make those decisions. The doctor won't be able to make those decisions. It's going to be a Washington bureaucrat that makes that decision. And we're told by our Democratic colleagues it's all about lowering cost. But just last Friday, the director of the Congressional Budget Office said that it's not going to rein in the cost of health care. In fact, it's going to cost more money. So let me get this right. It's going to cost more money to put in place Obamacare. It's going to take decisions away from patients and their family and their doctor about making health care decisions, and it's going to put a Washington bureaucrat in charge of those decisions. And that Washington bureaucrat is going to say whether a patient can get needed treatment, surgeries, x-rays, MRIs, or not. We already know in countries such as Great Britain and Canada that in those socialized medicine government-run programs that the death rates for cancer overall are much higher than here in the United States. Women get breast cancer in Canada and Great Britain, roughly 50% of them are dead after 5 years. Prostate cancer, the same. Roughly 50% of people that are diagnosed with prostate cancer in those countries, or 60%, are dead in 5 years. Here in the United States, it's over 90% are still alive. So what's going to happen here? Our death rates are going to go up for all cancers. Just today, we had a bill here on the floor that I talked about. And it is one to try to encourage people to understand diabetes. As a medical practitioner, I've treated diabetes for years. And the end result of diabetes, and the reason it's so important to catch it early and to treat it, is that people die at a young age when they have diabetes, a lot younger than they should if it's treated. But the thing is, as we ration health care and the Washington bureaucrat tells patients that they can't get the test that they need, they can't get the life-saving coronary bypass surgery or stents and the procedures they need to help them not die from heart attacks or from strokes. The Washington bureaucrats are going to say, particularly to the elderly, that you can't get the dialysis that you desperately need because you're old, and it's not cost effective, it's not comparatively effective, and thus you just must die and not get the treatment that you desperately need. So people are not only going to be put out of work, but people are going to be